This is the system architecture of the demo system I have here. At the bottom are the bottom tier of the Facility Explorer system. It includes two controllers, one PCG and one PCV. On the SA bus of the PCV controller, there is a thermostat. Through some configuration, the sensors can be shared across the controllers. The middle tier is the supervisory controller. FX supervisory controllers are web-based supervisory class controllers in the Facility Explorer product family. FX supervisory controllers manage networks of field controllers using open communication protocols, such as BACnet, Knownworks, and N2 protocols. FX supervisory controllers support a full set of building automation features, such as scheduling, alarming, histories, data sharing, energy management, totalization, and customized control routines. Each FX supervisory controller includes a graphical system user interface and a configuration tool that you can access with a web browser. Remote access is easily achieved from an internet or internet connection. The function of the Facility Explorer supervisory controller is a little bit similar to the NCE or NAE in the Metasys system. I'm going to use the embedded configuration tool to do some basic configuration and monitoring. So now I'm going to open my Internet Explorer. First, I would like to log in as an operator. We can create multiple users for in operators group, but here we have only one. So input the username and the password. Here is the main user interface for operators. So we can have a look. On the left is the image of the building and a weather forecast. In the middle there is the main menu. We have schedules and some summary information and the data history. On the right is a list of the systems. I have only created one, the VAV box, for one room. And we have a navigation bar here. So let's go through it to have a look at all the functions. Under the device networks, we are able to configure some of the networks to see the local devices and the controllers. On each controller, we can have a look at the points, schedules, change logs, and also the configuration information. So double click the configuration. It leads me to the configuration page for the specific controller. So let's see what we can change here. They are basically read-only. And for points under the controller, it shows us a list of points that has been added to the database. As an operator, we are allowed to change some settings for those points. So what we can do includes to enable or disable it, to add a change, to set the alarm, and also whether we would like a totalization to it. So let's do an example here. The zone temperature, if I click on the enable, the check marks will disappear. That's to say, point is disabled. We'll enable it again. And the change, if this box is checked, it means that we will archive the data from this point so that later we will be able to build a chain for this point. To enable alarm for certain points under certain circumstances, we shall check the alarm property for that point. The types of alarms are different for different kinds of points. So for example, the zone temperature, we will be able to give out alarm either when it is out of range or the status changes. So we will check out of range here. And for the damper position is the same, out of range or status. For occupancy schedule, the menu is a little bit different. It is enumerated point, and we can choose to trigger alarm when there is change of state or when the operator command fails or when the status changes. Totalization is very useful for energy saving as well as recording the running time for equipment. For example, if we have a power meter for a system, we can check that totalization and we will be able to get a power usage across some time. So that's the point list. We can also have a look at the change logs. If we are going to view some of the chains very frequently, we can build some change logs and save it here so that we don't have to build it every time. So the same for the other controller, the other program in another controller. Next, have a look at this schedule manager. In the schedule list, there are two schedules, schedule 1 and schedule 2. For schedule 2, I have already linked this schedule to an input of the program in the controller. So let's have a look at that point in the PCV controller first to see how the schedule works. So I'll load the file from the controller. Click load in PCT. Now I can access the program in the controllers by using backnet router. This is the configuration I have set up in the supervisory controller. So put the address UDP port network number and click next. Both controllers have been discovered and shown here. I will load the schedule from the lighting. Click next and finish to load the program from the controller to my computer. Okay, the program has been uploaded to the PCT. Here is the occupancy schedule. This network input occupancy schedule is an enumerated number. the actual value parsed from the supervisory controller to it is an integer, but its state text are listed as this. Number 1 means occupied, number 2 means unoccupied, number 3 standby, and number 4 not set. So when we configure the corresponding schedule in the supervisory controller, we need to do the same text in that schedule. So let's go back to the supervisory controller. We'll double click on this schedule. So this graphic shows the occupancy schedule of schedule 2. It is Saturday today, and the original schedule shows that it is unoccupied for the whole day on Saturday. Let's have a look what it looks like in the user interface. So from menu, file, home, I'll click on the VAV box D122, which is the user interface for both of the controllers. I basically integrated the points from both controllers into the same user interface. So now the occupancy schedule shows that it is unoccupied. Let's go back to the schedule and change the setup schedule to see if it works. Double click the schedule. And I would like to create an event on Saturday from 12 p.m. to 10 to 12 a.m. and then save it. We shall now get occupied output. So back to the user interface, and the occupancy status has been changed to occupied. So let's go back to the schedule manager to see what else we can do on the schedule. So let's go back to the schedule manager to see more details about configuring a schedule. So we double click on schedule number 2, schedule 2. We can set occupied, unoccupied, and we can also set standby. To change the start time and the finish time, we just put our mouse over the start line or end line and then drag it, or we can simply type in the event start or finish time. There is another tab, special events, where we can add the special events. For example, we can add some holidays or special events. Let's say on Sunday is normally unoccupied, but this Sunday we are going to have a special event, a special meeting or a show on this Sunday, which is March 29th. and we'll set the date, we'll set it as occupied from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now a special event is added. We can also have some other events like holidays when it is unoccupied for the whole day. After adding the events, just click to save it. In the Properties tab, we can set the default output for the calendar, and in the forces list, we are able to edit the text. We need to match this to the list in our PCT controllers. So I change it to occupied and unoccupied. When it is false, it's unoccupied. When it is true, it's occupied. Click OK. And the last tab is a summary. On which day the room is occupied and on which days they are unoccupied. So after finishing all the configurations, save the calendar and link it to the point in a specific program. We can actually link one schedule to multiple programs if they share the same schedule. And the next is the link manager. The link manager allows us to share some points across different controllers. For example, the outdoor air temperature. It is normally used by multiple controllers, but normally we only need one sensor to do the measurement. In that case, we can share that temperature across the FC bus and link it to the inputs of other controllers so that they don't need multiple sensors for the same point. The next is point groups. We can group those points, and sometimes it will help us manage it better. Next is the global point extension manager. So it is the same as we have shown in the device networks. The only difference is that this one shows all the points from all the controllers. It allows us to enable the points, add the chains, alarm, and the totalization settings here. And it also shows the status of different points. When there is alarm, it will be highlighted in red, and when the point is overridden, it will be highlighted in purple. The last one, point histories, will lead us to the history chain builder. We can do some settings. The time range, we can choose today or last week, whatever we would like. We'll set a title here, whether we would like to show or hide the grid lines. And on the left, in the left panel is a list of histories. So it shows only the points with the chained check mark checked. If we would like to add some other points to the chained list, we would need to go back to the point summary sheet and enable the chain for that point. So I would like to build a chain for the room temperature and the room temperature set point to have a comparison. We can add multiple points in one chart and drag from the left and drop to the right. So now we have those 2 points, and then click build. here is the temperature chart of the room. We can find the legends at the bottom. The blue one is the zone temperature from the VAV box thermostat, and the blue one, it is the zone temperature set point. While we do the historic data archive, we can set whether to record that data if it doesn't change for a long time. So obviously here the set point hasn't been changed for a long time and no new raw data are collected. So another thing to pay attention is that they have different y-axis. The zone temperature uses the left y-axis, while the zone temperature set point uses the right y-axis. So now let's go back to the main. So that's the list of the navigation. Now let's go back to the home screen, home user interface. So we have introduced the schedules, trend history data, and for summary information, point groups, yes, we have introduced it. 4-point summary, alarm summary, we will be able to see that in the VAV box. Override summary gives us a summary of override operation. So we have overridden the damper position at some point. Now it is still overridden. So during the operation, we need sometimes to go back to this override summary to check if this override is still necessary or not. Going back. There is another offline summary. This offline summary provides a summary of the system status when there are some points that went offline. In the system list, we can add as many as we want. Here, I only added one for the VAV box. This user interface is fully configurable. We can put whatever images and points we want in the user interface. As an example here, I have used an image from the library of the JCI supervisory controller for single duct. In some of them, we can add some animations to show whether the equipment is running or not. And here, the cooling enabled and the heating enabled, they are hooked up to the status data. If the real-time data is enabled, it will be shown in yellowish green. And when the system is not enabled, then we show a red image here. All the others are real-time data. We can choose whatever points we would like to display in the user interface. For those read-only data, we won't be able to do anything to them. It's for information only. And for this occupancy sensor, we have just demonstrated it. We won't be able to override it directly here by clicking it, but we can change it by change the schedule in the schedule manager. And the damper position, we are able to override it here. So we just set a number 70 some time ago. Now I'm going to override it again to fully close it. Now the integrated actuator in the PCV controller is moving. And or we can set it back to auto. That's to cancel the override. So when I set it to auto, the damper position is using the output from the program in the controller, and it decides that we need 100% opening. And at the top is a set of buttons which can lead us to different functions. For points, we have introduced it. It is the same as the global point extension manager. The same for extensions and totalization. If we have already set any of those totalizations, we can click it to show the totalizations of energy or device running time, whatever. But we haven't set up any totalization here. Click on the alarms button will bring us to the alarm console. So we can choose the time range to show only the alarms in that time. And the alarms have different colors. Green means the status are normal, and yellow are the alarms that have been acknowledged, while red represents the alarms that haven't been acknowledged. We can double click and acknowledge it. Sometimes we can just add some notes to it, maybe what kind of examination you have made and what is your conclusion and the status of the equipment, say false alarm, and put my initials here and add a note so that the when the next shift comes in, he or she would understand what happened and why I acknowledged that alarm. We can also use the filter to display certain alarms that are of your interest. So go back to home. History will lead us, the history button will lead us to the history change builder. So we have introduced it. That's all about the operator privilege.